A $1 billion facility, 20 hectares of land, 4 phases of construction, and a label that nobody on Earth has ever been able to verify. In May of 2026, the president of the Romanian Senate stood up and made an announcement that sent shockwaves through Eastern Europe. Romania, he said, would soon be home to the world's first quantum artificial intelligence data center. Not in Germany, not in the Netherlands, not in Ireland, where the big tech giants usually build their server farms. In a small commune called Luna in Cluj County, Romania. If this is true, it would catapult a country that most people associate with castles and folklore into the center of the global technology race. But here's the question almost nobody in the mainstream. Romanian press dared to ask out loud, is any of this actually real? If you have ever wondered how a tiny announcement on Facebook can spiral into international headlines, stay with us, because this story has more twists than anyone expected. Let's start with what was actually said, because the words matter here more than you might think. Mircea Aberdean, the president of the Romanian Senate, posted on Facebook that he had just met with representatives of an American company called Driver AI. According to him, this company was about to build the world's first data center powered by quantum artificial intelligence, right there in Luna Commune. He described 4 phases of construction spread across 20 hectares of land, with the first phase alone requiring an investment of around $1 billion. He wrote that any American investment in Romania represents an investment in the country's security, and he framed the deal as proof of a deepening partnership between Romania and the United States. If you're starting to feel like this sounds too good to be true for a country that isn't exactly known as a quantum computing powerhouse, you're not alone. And that feeling is exactly why people started digging. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, because this story only gets stranger from here. Aberdean didn't stop there. He claimed that students and researchers from elite universities in Cluj would gain what he called unprecedented access to advanced GPU computing resources and quantum hardware. He even said the project would transform Romania into what he described as an anchor of innovation in Europe. These are massive claims for a single Facebook post. He tied the announcement to a visit he had made to Washington back in February of 2026, suggesting that this deal had been months in the making at the highest levels of government. For a country that has spent years trying to attract serious foreign tech investment, this looked like the jackpot. Local outlets across Romania picked up the story almost instantly, and international tech press followed soon after. Within days, headlines were calling it a historic moment for Eastern European technology. But somewhere between the press release and the fine print, the story started to fall apart. So who exactly is this company called Driver AI? The one supposedly about to drop $1 billion into rural Cluj County? This is where things get genuinely shocking. According to investigative reporting from Romanian business publication, Ziarul Financiar, Driver AI LLC, was registered in the state of Arizona in July of 2024. That's less than 2 years before this so-called billion-dollar announcement. The company's registered address is not a sleek office tower or a tech campus. It is a residential address in Peoria, Arizona, a quiet suburb nowhere near Silicon Valley or any major data center hub. LinkedIn data, reviewed by journalists, suggests the company has somewhere between 11 and 50 employees. 11 to 50 people, building what is supposedly the world's first quantum AI mega facility. If your jaw just dropped, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we haven't even gotten to the strangest part yet. Here is the detail that should stop you in your tracks. Driver AI's actual commercial products have nothing to do with quantum computing or data centers at all. The company's main offerings are called Zip-E and Spark-E. Zip-E is described as an augmented reality shopping navigation app, the kind of tool that might help you find a product on a store shelf. Spark-E is a conversational AI assistant designed to increase the average value of a shopping cart, essentially a chatbot built to upsell customers while they browse online. These are retail technology products. They have no documented connection whatsoever to hyperscale infrastructure, quantum hardware, or anything resembling the kind of engineering needed to build an 80-megawatt data center. Imagine hiring a company that builds grocery store apps to construct a nuclear reactor. That is roughly the scale of the credibility gap that researchers uncovered here, and it is exactly why so many experts started raising their eyebrows. And subscribe right now if you're as stunned by this as we were. The leadership team behind Driver AI doesn't exactly fill in the gaps either. The founder and CEO is named Carrie Tantlinger. The chief technology officer, Tracy Simons, has a background in telecommunications and previously worked with the Defense Information Systems Agency, which sounds impressive on paper, but is not the same as experience building quantum computing infrastructure. The chief operating officer, Aidan Mulligan, is a West Point graduate currently pursuing an MBA at the University of Chicago. The chief financial officer, Jacob Weinberg, is described as a business strategist and military veteran. Notice what's missing from every single one of these descriptions. None of these executives have any documented, verifiable experience in data center development, hyperscale construction, or quantum computing operations. These are the people who are supposedly about to deliver one of the most technically demanding infrastructure projects on the planet. If this is starting to feel like a house of cards, you're reading the situation correctly, and that's exactly why this story deserves your attention. Don't scroll past without liking this video first. Now let's talk about the money, because the financial picture here is just as murky as the technical one. According to that same investigative reporting, Driver AI's referenced funding sources include the University of Arizona Center for Innovation and the United States National Science Foundation. Here's the problem. These organizations typically hand out grants in the range of tens of thousands to a few $100,000. They are designed to help early-stage startups get off the ground, not to bankroll a billion-dollar hyperscale data center campus. There is a massive, almost laughable gap between the kind of funding these institutions provide and the kind of capital required to build even the first 20-megawatt phase of this project. Nobody has been able to identify where the actual $1 billion is supposed to come from. No bank has been named, no private equity fund has been named, no sovereign wealth backer has stepped forward. Just a number repeated in press releases with no visible source behind it. This is exactly the kind of detail that makes seasoned analysts deeply uncomfortable. So if you're feeling that same discomfort, smash that like button right now. It wasn't long before voices inside Romania's own tech community started pushing back publicly. George Roth, a Romanian-American software entrepreneur and former collaborator with UiPath, one of Romania's most successful tech exports, issued a pointed public critique of the entire project. Roth said, in essence, that ambition alone is not enough, and that strategic infrastructure projects on this scale require independent and serious verification before any government gets involved. Think about what he's really saying here. A respected figure from Romania's actual tech success story is publicly warning that this deal has not been properly vetted. Roth specifically questioned whether Driver AI had secured any partnerships with major quantum computing companies, cloud providers, semiconductor manufacturers, or research institutions. He also asked, quite reasonably, whether the source of the capital was transparent and verifiable. These are the exact questions any due diligence team would ask before signing off on a $1 billion deal. And according to Roth, satisfying answers simply weren't there. If you appreciate someone willing to ask the hard questions, this is the moment to subscribe. Roth went even further, raising operational concerns that the political announcement completely glossed over. He asked about energy consumption and grid impact, since an 80-megawatt facility would require enormous amounts of stable power in a region where infrastructure is already stretched thin. He asked about water cooling requirements, a critical detail for any large-scale data center since cooling failures can shut entire facilities down. He even asked whether Driver AI had identified its actual client base. Would the facility serve Romanian state institutions, European companies, global AI firms? Nobody seemed to know, including, it appears, the people making the announcement. Roth also tackled the quantum AI label itself head-on, calling it ambiguous, and arguing that what currently exists in this space should be understood as experimental or hybrid quantum classical research infrastructure, not production-ready technology that customers could actually rely on. In other words, even if this project were 100% real, the label being used to market it might still be misleading. This brings us to a much bigger question that extends far beyond one small commune in Cluj County. What does the phrase quantum AI even mean in 2026? Because here's the uncomfortable truth that very few politicians want to admit. According to researchers who actually study this field, quantum AI is not about running massive language models on quantum processors, and it is definitely not about replacing the kind of neural networks that power chatbots and image generators with quantum circuits. What it actually refers to is something far narrower. It means identifying very specific, narrow computational tasks where quantum mechanics might offer some advantage, and using artificial intelligence to help make finicky, error-prone quantum computers function more reliably. Companies like Google, IBM, Microsoft, and Amazon are absolutely investing in this intersection, but their own scientists openly admit that fully operational, large-scale quantum AI systems are simply not a reality yet. There's even a running joke inside the quantum computing industry that quantum technology is always 3 to 5 years away, every single year, no matter how much time actually passes. This is precisely why the term quantum AI has become such fertile ground for hype and, in some cases, outright misuse. Industry analysts who track this space have noted that the term gets thrown around as a buzzword that sounds powerful, without requiring any real technical explanation behind it. In fact, this exact phrase has already been weaponized once before in an entirely different context. There have been so-called quantum AI trading platforms online that promise to use quantum computing and artificial intelligence to guarantee profits in cryptocurrency and stock trading. Financial regulators in multiple countries have issued public investor warnings about these platforms, describing them as scams that prey on people who don't understand the underlying technology well enough to spot the red flags. The pattern is strikingly familiar. Take two words that sound cutting edge and futuristic, stack them together, and use the resulting buzzword to bypass the kind of scrutiny a more honestly described project would face. Whether or not that is exactly what's happening in Clutch County is for you to decide, but the parallel is hard to ignore. And if you're seeing it too, hit that subscribe button now. So where does this leave the actual physical project on the ground in Luna commune? According to reports, the facility is meant to sit inside an industrial and technology park developed by a company called Leviathan Group. A separate firm, E-Infra, has been named as the partner responsible for power supply and energy systems. Another company, Karstens Consulting Global, has stepped in to handle project management and what's described as institutional coordination. On paper, this creates the appearance of a fully assembled team. But naming partners is not the same as having binding, fully financed contracts in place. Romania's broader data center market has genuinely been growing, driven by European Union digital sovereignty initiatives and the country's geographic position bridging Western and Eastern Europe. Cluj-Napoca itself is a legitimate and respected tech hub, home to talented graduates from Babs-Bolyai University and the Technical University of Cluj-Napoca. The region has real potential. That part of the story is not in dispute. What remains in serious dispute is whether this particular company, with this particular leadership team and this particular funding picture, is actually capable of delivering an 80-megawatt hyperscale facility. And that's really the heart of the problem, because Romania's underlying infrastructure for a project of this size is far from guaranteed either. Unlike established European data center hubs such as Frankfurt, Amsterdam, or Dublin, Romania's electrical grid, permitting processes, and available power capacity for hyperscale facilities remain considerably less developed. Multiple Romanian observers have publicly flagged this exact concern. Securing the grid connections alone for an 80-megawatt campus is a massive undertaking that can take years of regulatory approval, even for established, well-funded operators with a long track record. For a company that didn't exist before July of 2024, operating out of a residential address in Arizona, with a leadership team built around shopping apps, that hurdle looks less like a formality and more like a wall. George Roth's proposed solution deserves real attention here. He suggested that Romania create independent committees made up of scientists, technologists, economists, financiers, and infrastructure experts to evaluate major strategic technology projects before any government official publicly endorses them. His point was simple. This process should be professional, not political. A senator's Facebook post should never be the only due diligence a billion-dollar infrastructure project receives. Let's also talk about the timeline itself, because timelines tell you a lot about whether a project is real or whether it's mostly theater. Driver AI was registered in Arizona in July of 2024. The meeting in Washington that Aberdeen references took place in February of 2026, just a year and a half later. The public announcement in Luna commune followed in May of 2026. And by June, Driver AI was already being described in press coverage as having moved forward with plans, language that suggests momentum and progress, even though no independently verified construction, permitting, or financing milestones had actually been confirmed. Compare that to how real hyperscale data center projects usually unfold. Companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google typically spend years quietly securing land rights, environmental permits, power purchase agreements, and construction contracts before they ever go public with an announcement. The fact that this entire trajectory, from a company barely 2 years old to a billion-dollar international headline, happened so quickly is itself a warning sign that experienced infrastructure analysts immediately picked up on. Speed isn't always a problem, but speed without paperwork almost always is, and that gap is exactly what investigative journalists in Romania chose to dig into. There's also the matter of how this story spread once it became public, and it's worth pausing on this because it reveals something important about how modern political announcements travel. Aberdeen's original claim came from a single Facebook post. From there, it was picked up by Romanian news aggregators, then by international data center trade publications, then by general business press. At each stage, the core claim that this would be the world's first quantum AI data center was repeated and reinforced, often without any additional independent verification being added along the way. By the time skeptical, deeply reported pieces from outlets like Ziarul Financiar and investigative platforms started circulating, the original headline had already traveled around the world several times over. This is a pattern that shows up again and again in modern tech journalism. The exciting claim moves fast. The careful fact check moves slow. And by the time the fact check catches up, millions of people have already absorbed the original, unverified version as established fact. If you've noticed this happening with other tech stories too, you're not imagining it. And that's exactly why independent research channels like this one matter so much right now. It's also worth asking what Romania actually stands to gain or lose here, regardless of how this particular deal plays out. On one hand, the country has genuine, well-documented strengths that make it an attractive destination for serious technology investment. Cluj-Napoca has built a real reputation as a software engineering hub over the past decade, producing graduates who go on to work at major global tech companies. Romania sits at a useful geographic crossroads between Western Europe and the Black Sea region, and European Union policy has been actively pushing for more digital infrastructure to be built outside of the traditional hubs of Frankfurt, Amsterdam, and Dublin. Any of that could make Romania a legitimate target for a real, well-financed data center operator down the line. On the other hand, if this particular project collapses publicly after this much political fanfare, it risks creating a credibility problem that could make future, more serious investors hesitant to engage with Romanian officials the next time a big announcement comes along. Political capital, once spent on an unverified claim, is not easy to earn back. And that's a risk every government takes when it rushes to claim a world first before the underlying details are locked down. This case also fits into a much larger global pattern that's worth understanding, because Romania is far from the only place where the words quantum and AI have been bolted together to generate headlines that outpace the underlying reality. Around the world, the race to be seen as a leader in next-generation computing has pushed governments, companies, and investors to embrace terminology faster than the science itself has actually matured. Quantum computing remains, by the admission of the scientists actually building it, in an early and experimental stage, useful for narrow research problems, but nowhere close to powering everyday consumer applications or replacing the GPU-driven infrastructure that currently runs the world's AI systems. When a politician or a company attaches the word quantum to a project, it instantly signals cutting-edge prestige, global competitiveness, and a kind of futuristic legitimacy that's hard to argue against in a press conference. That's precisely what makes the term so useful for marketing, and precisely what makes it so easy to misuse, whether the misuse is intentional or simply the result of officials repeating language they were handed without fully understanding it. So, did Romania actually land the world's first quantum AI data center? Or did a small Arizona startup with a shopping app and a big dream convince a sitting Senate president to put his political weight behind an unverified claim? Based on everything uncovered so far, the most honest answer sits somewhere uncomfortably in between. The land exists. The political enthusiasm is absolutely real. The announcement was made on the record by a powerful elected official with specific numbers attached. But the company behind it has no documented history in data centers or quantum computing. Its leadership has no relevant track record. Its named funding sources don't add up to anywhere near $1 billion. And the very term, quantum AI, being used to describe the project is, according to the people who actually understand the technology, more aspirational marketing than verified engineering. This is a story that will likely take months or even years to fully resolve, as permits either get approved or stall, as funding either materializes or quietly disappears, and as driver AI either breaks ground in Luna Commune or fades from the headlines the same way it arrived. We'll be watching this one closely, and we think you should too. If you want to see how this unfolds, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because when the next chapter of this story breaks, you'll want to be the first to know. Drop a comment below telling us whether you think this project is the real deal or the biggest tech bluff Eastern Europe has seen in years. Tell us which detail surprised you the most. The residential address in Arizona, the shopping apps, the missing $1 billion, or the senator who staked his credibility on a single Facebook post. Whatever side you land on, this is exactly the kind of story that gets buried under flashy headlines if nobody keeps asking questions, and that's exactly what we plan to keep doing. We'll see you in the next video.